Hi everyone, I'm Linda Reimer, one of the librarians at the Southeast Steuben County Library. Welcome to Library Connections, our weekly readers, viewers, and listeners advisory videocast. Enjoy. Library Connections number 108. This is the Friday, July 29th, 2022 edition of Library Connections. And this week is the third video in our three-part summer reading recommendations series. So this week I'm going to offer info on 10 cool books that you could read this summer if you're looking for something new to read. So many books, so little time of course, but as summer is a time for vacation, you might have more time for reading. So our first recommended summer read this week is the new Taylor Jenkins Reid novel, Carrie Soto is Back. This one is coming out actually at the end of August. We'll have it on August 30th. You'll probably be able to put it on hold the week before that, but this is a very popular author, so I'm including her as the first title, alphabetically of course. So let me tell you a little about the book. In this powerful novel about the cost of greatness, a legendary athlete attempts a comeback when the world considers her past her prime. From the New York Times best-selling author of Malibu Rising, Daisy Jones and the Six, and The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo. Carrie Soto is fierce, and her determination to win at any cost has not made her popular. But by the time she retires from tennis, she is the best player the world has ever seen. She has shattered every record and claimed 20 Grand Slam titles. And if you ask Carrie, she is entitled to every one. She sacrificed nearly everything to become the best, with her father Javier as her coach. A former champion himself, Javier has trained her since the age of 2. But 6 years after her retirement, Carrie finds herself sitting in the stands of the 1994 U.S. Open, watching her record be taken from her by a brutal, stunning player named Nikki Chan. At 37 years old, Carrie makes the monumental decision to come out of retirement and be coached by her father for one last year in an attempt to reclaim her record. Even if the sports media says that they never liked the battle axe anyway, even if her body doesn't move as fast as it did, and even if it means swallowing her pride to train with a man she once almost opened her heart to, Bo Huntley. Like her, he has something to prove before he gives up the game forever. In spite of it all, Carrie Soto is back for one epic final season. In this riveting and unforgettable novel, Taylor Jenkins Reid tells her most vulnerable, emotional story yet. So that's going to be an exciting read. Moving on to our second recommended summer read, it's French Braid, a novel by Anne Tyler. In the Garrett family, each person is an island, mysterious and self-contained. Yet as Tyler reveals so deftly, all are inextricably connected. Her latest Baltimore-anchored, lushly imagined, psychologically intricate, virtually inhalable novel is a stepping stone tale, with each finely composed section after the opening scene jumping forward in time, generation by generation. In 1959, Mercy is the wife of a stalwart plumber turned manager of her family's hardware store. The mother of temperamentally opposite teen daughters and a younger, dreamy son, she is also the story's heart and core enigma. All Mercy, who can be merciless, wants to do is paint in solitude. And her house portraits, which feature soft-focused interiors in which one object is rendered in hyper-detail, parallel Tyler zeroing in on characters at key moments. Bossy Alice is forever baffled by Lily, her more passionate sister. David, a high school drama and English teacher, surprises everyone by marrying the seemingly austere school nurse. One granddaughter inherits Mercy's artistic talent, a grandson thinks no one knows he's gay, and Mercy's long-suffering husband is a font of unshakable love. In closing, the pandemic brings together a household of Garretts and their neighbors in new, rejuvenating ways. At every leap, Tyler balances gracefully between tenderness and piquant humor, her insights into human nature luminous. High-demand backstory, Tyler is a phenomenon, each of her novels fresh and incisive, and this charming family tale will be honey for her fans. Another great novel. Moving on to our third recommended read, and this one is nonfiction. It's called Funny Farm, My Unexpected Life with 600 Rescue Animals by Lori Zielinski. In her debut memoir, Zielinski recounts founding her animal sanctuary, the Funny Farm Rescue. It had been her mother Annie's dream to live on a farm with her many rescued animals, but Annie died shortly before Zielinski closed on the 200-acre plot in Mays Landing, New Jersey in 2000. With the determination that drove her to create a successful photography and graphics company, Zielinski expanded on her mother's dream, building a loving refuge for hundreds of neglected or abandoned domestic, farm, and exotic animals, and a beloved site for visitors and volunteers. Zielinski's debut interweaves origin stories of Funny Farm's animal residents with recollections from her own childhood after her mother left an abusive husband. Themes of kindness and acceptance pervade in Zielinski's book and in Funny Farm's mission. Verdict: readers will be inspired to visit virtually, or maybe even in person, the animals they read about, like Emily the emu and Cowboy the goat. Zielinski's animal stories are immensely relatable and often told with the mix of empathy, outrage, humor, and steady resolve that is familiar to seasoned animal rescuers. Readers may also feel a special connection with Annie and her story of courage and unconditional love. And that's the Starred Library Journal review. Moving on to our fourth recommended read, it's the new novel Lessons in Chemistry by Bonnie Garmus. Cooking is chemistry. When Elizabeth Zote enters a relationship with the brilliant Calvin Evans, she cooks him meals in exchange for sharing his home. They are both scientists at a California research institute in the 1960s. And although she has to fight for basic supplies like beakers, he is celebrated for the funding his work generates. When their relationship is tragically cut short, she turns to cooking and lands a job as the chef of a television show, allowing her to support her daughter Madeline. Stymied in her scientific career by the misogynistic attitudes of her colleagues, Elizabeth nevertheless persists in this unflinching examination of the hurdles women of the era had to overcome to be valued similarly to men in the workplace. With the help of a forthright neighbor, a loyal TV producer, and an astute dog, Elizabeth forges a path that includes an unexpected hobby as a rower and her no-nonsense cooking show in which she draws on her knowledge of chemistry. Indeflatable and formidable, Elizabeth pushes the bounds of how women and their work are perceived in this thoroughly engaging debut novel. And that's the book list review. So if you like historical fiction, and I guess we have to say that the 60s is a historical era now, check out this novel. Moving on to our fifth recommended read, it's the new Susan Straight novel, Mecca. Straight's ambitious return to fiction, after the memoir In the Country of Women, takes an empathic look at members of Southern California's Latinx community who face the dangers of fires, earthquakes, ice raids, police brutality, and La Corona. There's Johnny Frias, a 40-year-old motorcycle cop who lives with the secret knowledge of the rapist he killed and buried in Bee Canyon 20 years earlier. Jimena, a young, undocumented Mexican woman working as a maid at a desert spa, who comes across a newborn infant abandoned there. Mary Jordan, a neonatal nurse whose teenage son Terenfe lies brain dead in the hospital where she works, having been shot by a cop. Matalise Rodriguez, a harried mother of 2 young children, whose husband Ronaldo has left them for a new life practicing capoeira. And Mrs. Bunny, a mysterious wealthy woman living in Los Angeles' Los Feliz neighborhood, whose fate is improbably intertwined with those of Johnny and Jimena. The author's love of the Inland Empire and its people shines through on every page. And there is a Didion-esque quality to Straight's depiction of SoCal characters living in the shadow of prejudice and poverty. But in place of Didion's free-floating ennui, there is a fierce compassion. This evokes the best California fiction, and that is the Starred Publishers Weekly Review. Moving on to our sixth recommended read, it's Night of the Living Res, Stories by Morgan Talty. Debut. At one point in Talty's debut, his young characters discuss how many times they will watch the Sherman Alexie penned film Smoke Signals in the upcoming school year. It's a fitting reference point, as perhaps no work proves a closer touchstone for Talty's short stories than Alexie's story collection, titled The Long Ranger and Tonto Fist Fight in Heaven, which served as inspiration for the 1998 film Smoke Signals, which, by the way, the library does have on DVD if you'd like to check it out, but I digress. Getting back to the book Night of the Living Res, Talty's debut is constructed as a series of interconnected stories centered around a single indigenous character, navigating the small pleasures and existential pangs of modern existence. Here, that's Penobscot narrator David, the sketch of his life told in a collage of 12 stories, moving back and forth between childhood and adulthood and through a cast of memorable orbiting characters. What's so impressive in the story collection, and ultimately what imbibes the work with such poignancy, is Talty's restraint. His refusal to opt for sensationalism over authenticity. There's a graceful interplay between his stories here, with portraits of pronounced family tragedy bleeding beautifully into those of gentle childhood hijinks. Talty understands each life as a small mythology, a grand accumulation of minutiae, and brings depth and nuance to each of these stories. The result is a work that builds in power across its pages, its woven narrative tapestry becoming richer and more robust with each successive story. Verdict: Talty's debut story collection is a wonderfully understated work with sneaky emotional force, anchored by a memorable main character and the author's keen understanding of childhoods that have been marked by instability. And that's the Library Journal review. Moving on to our 7th recommended read. This one's nonfiction. It's called Truly Madly by Stephen Galloway, and it focuses on Vivien Leigh, Laurence Olivier, and it says in fine print on the cover there, the romance of the century. That, of course, being the 20th century, but I digress. Galloway, former executive editor of The Hollywood Reporter, offers a richly detailed account of the fiery ascent and demise of one of Hollywood's most glamorous couples. While starring in 1937's Fire Over England, Vivien Leigh and Laurence Olivier, both married at the time, became enmeshed in a passionate affair. Each moment they weren't working, Galloway writes, they would sneak off, find a private space where they could talk, laugh, and touch. After a break from filming 21 Days, the two ran away together, and a few years later, married in 1940. Weaving in uncovered correspondence and interviews with family and friends, Galloway delivers a taut narrative, charting the couple's rise to stardom on stage and screen. Notably, Leigh's performance as Scarlett O'Hara in 1939's Gone with the Wind, and Olivier's starring role in 1944's Henry V. But as the author unveils, Leigh's shifting moods, and later, manic episodes and depression, became the slow drip of pain that eventually led to the couple's divorce in 1960. Galloway's reporting is immersive and intimate, and studded with vivid recollections, including one from actor Haley Mills of a dressed-up evening the couple hosted where guests were stark naked except for wearing a tie. It's a riveting story brought to life by the outsized passion that entangled them and later tore them apart. This page-turning biography is one to get swept up in, and that's the Publisher's Weekly Review. Moving on to our 8th recommended read, this is the new novel Trust by Hernan Diaz. Pulitzer Prize finalist Diaz returns with a multi-layered novel that pieces together a searing portrait of a New York financial elite during the early 20th century world through 4 discrete documents. The first is a novel written by Harold Vanner about the reluctant scion of a tobacco empire named Benjamin Rask. Vanner describes Rask as an inept athlete, an apathetic clubman, an unenthusiastic drinker, an indifferent gambler, and a lukewarm lover. The second is a partial memoir written by Andrew Bevel, a New York financier with a clear resemblance to the character in Vanner's novel, who seeks retribution for Vanner's fictionalization of his life. The third piece presents the memoirs of Ida Partins, a journalist turned accomplice to Bevel's ambitions to ruin Vanner, who also seeks to undermine Bevel's marriage. The final section delivers the journal entries of Mildred, Bevel's wife, adding yet another facet to the stories within stories. For all its elegant complexity and brilliant construction, Diaz's novel is compulsively readable, and, despite taking place in the early 1900s, the plot reads like an indictment of the start of the 21st century, with its obsession with obscure financial instruments and unhinged capital accumulation. A captivating tour de force that will astound readers with its formal invention and contemporary relevance. And that's the book list review. Moving on to our 9th recommended read. This, of course, is nonfiction. It's Watergate, A New History, a new book by Garrett Graff. Journalist Graff sheds new light on the Watergate scandal in this exhaustive history, drawing on memoirs, tape recordings, court transcripts, and recently declassified FBI documents. Graff highlights the paranoia and ambition that ran through the Nixon administration, from the distrust between the president and his national security advisor, Henry Kissinger, to disagreements between Chief of Staff H.R. Haldeman, White House counsel John Dean, and campaign chairman John Mitchell. Though Nixon's campaigns had always involved a certain abnormal level of dirty tricks, according to Graff, a series of leaks and scandals, including the release of the Pentagon Papers, helped push his aides to new heights of skullduggery, orchestrating break-ins at the Brookings Institute in 1971 and the headquarters of the Democratic National Committee in the Watergate building in 1972. Graff skillfully interweaves the perspectives of journalists and law enforcement officials investigating the Watergate break-in with the Nixon team's attempts to use the organs of government to cover up their own rogue operation. The author incisively analyzes how the congressional inquiry into the scandal resulted in Democrats and Republicans coming together to uphold the Constitution and limit the powers of the president. Expertly researched and assembled, this is a valuable introduction to one of history's greatest political scandals. And that's the Publisher's Weekly Review. And our 10th and final summer reading recommendation is the new novel, The Women Could Fly, by Megan Giddings. Giddings pulls off a dynamite story of a black woman's resistance in an oppressive dystopia. Joe Thomas's mother, Tiana, has been declared dead after having been missing for 14 years. At 28, the age at which all women must marry or register with the Bureau of Witchcraft, Joe works at the Museum of Cursed Art and is in love with her white best friend Angie. Tiana taught Jo as a girl that magic wasn't real, but rather a myth to enable oppressions of women and non-cisgendered people. Jo is set to inherit a large sum from Tiana on the condition that she agrees to visit an island in Lake Superior, which, according to a story Tiana once told her, only appears once every 7 years. The instructions remind her of a story her mother told her as a child about an island with a treasure. Though Jo doesn't want to leave her sometimes boyfriend Preston or her job and Angie, she complies. And upon returning, is promptly imprisoned for suspected witchcraft. When Preston promises to take custody of Jo, as required by law, the two enter a tender phase of their relationship. But after the island's secrets leak into the real world, Jo is imprisoned again. Giddings ingeniously blends her harrowing parable of an all-powerful patriarchy with insights into racial imbalances, such as a scene in which Jo and Angie are pulled over by the cops. And that's the Starred Publishers Weekly Review. And here briefly are our references for the week. Moving on to our next section, Next Week at the Library, offering a brief overview of programs and events hosted by the library, on-site and off, for the week ahead of us. In this case, the week is the week of August 1st through the 6th, 2022. This information can also be found online. Just visit the library's website located at ssclibrary.org and click on the big bold calendar link you'll see located near the top of the page. Registration is required for all programs unless otherwise specified or unless the program is of the online on-demand variety. And you also see the program's key there. Adult programs are shown in red, teen programs in teal, kids programs in blue, and programs for all ages are shown in pink. On Monday, August 1st, we have 2 programs of note. The first is the monthly story walk in Fallbrook Park, which is a self-guided walk through the park to participate in the story, which is posted through the park, The 3 Little Fish and the Big Bad Shark by Ken Geist. You can drop by anytime between 10 a.m. and noon. Then from 6 to 8 p.m., we have the program Save Room for a Cake with David Seymour. Join us for the presentation of a 2-year project to bake 95 cakes from the cookbook American Cake by Ann Byrne. From the history of making cakes to the science of baking cakes and the results of making these cakes. Cake tasting or take samples home. And about the presenter, David Seymour is an engineer and local resident whose interest in history, science, and baking converged in this project. On Tuesday, August 2nd, we've got 2 programs in Library Land. The first is the weekly Adult Scrabble, which runs from 9 to 11 a.m. The program is held in the library's reading room. And from 10 to 11 a.m., we have Williams Toyota Storytime in Centerway Square. The location of this program is Centerway Square. Join Miss Sue at 10 a.m. in downtown Corning every other week from Tuesday, June 7th through Tuesday, August 16th. In the event of rain, the story time will be live streamed on our Facebook page. But if it's sunny, you can join Sue in Centerway Square for her Williams Toyota story time. On Wednesday, August 3rd, we have a whole host of programs in Library Land. The first is Dive into Kindergarten Story Time. That program runs from 10 to 10:30 a.m. and is held in Fallbrook Park. It is intended for little ones getting ready to go to school for the first time. Then from 11 a.m. to noon, it's Little Gather at the Corning Museum of Glass. That program is held at the Corning Museum of Glass. The library staff will be there for a family fun session that starts at 11 a.m. and will offer a make-it-yourself project to do at home with instructions and a supply kit. Then from noon to 1 p.m. we have free grilled lunch for kids 18 and under. You can join us for a hot grilled lunch provided by the Corning Painted Post School District. The location of this program is in Civic Center Plaza, which is outside the library, between the library and the City Hall. The lunch is free for kids 18 and under, and adults can buy a lunch for $5. Then in the afternoon, on Wednesday, August 3rd, we've got the Kids Farmers Market from 1 to 2 p.m. That's always a popular program. Kids can get fruits and vegetables for free. You have to bring your own bag, and you enter through the Chemung side of the building. There is a door there, and then you exit through the lobby. And from 1 to 3 p.m., we have the weekly Mahjong program. That program is in the library's reading room and is always fun. Then in the evening, on Wednesday, August 3rd, we've got Happy Tales, Therapy Dog Story Time for Kids. From 5:30 to 6:30 p.m., that program is held in the Children's Department and has kids reading to therapy dogs. And then finally, from 6 to 8 p.m., the weekly Corning Adult Writers Group, which is a hybrid program both at the library and via Zoom. You have to register for that one. And that's actually it for Wednesday, August 3rd. On Thursday, August 4th, we've got one program at the library. It's Teen Dungeons and Dragons, which is a program held at the library. It's led by professional dungeon master Tim Collins. This gathering is suitable for those ages 13 to 17. All levels of experience are welcomed in this safe space. Feel free to come to one session or all. Registration is required. You can register by dropping by the library, giving us a call, or through the library's calendar of events found on our website. And I forgot that green. Well, it's not green, is it? It's orange. I forgot the orange dot. There it is. Yeah, I'm looking at the Teen Dungeons and Dragons, which is in a shade of green. Anyway, that's it for Thursday, August 4th, and I'm digressing, so let's get back to the calendar of events. On Friday, August 5th, we have 4 items to bring to your attention. The first is the debut of the monthly book review by Michelle Wells. Michelle is the head of adult services at the library and a published author, and she posts a new review each month on her writer's blog, found at storymusing.blogspot.com. Then from 10 to 10:30 a.m., we have Science Time with Miss Abby. The location of that program is Facebook Live. At 1 p.m., we have the debut of the new Library Connections video, which you can access through Facebook and the library's YouTube channel. And then from 5 to 7 p.m., we have Crochet 101 for teens and adults with Philomena Jack. That's another program that you do have to register for. And those are our programs for the week ahead of us. And here briefly is the listing of the library program's contacts. Should you have questions about any program, feel free to contact us. And that's the program for this week. I'll be back next week with a new edition of Library Connections. Have a great week.